Dr. Decker, humble servant of His Majesty Hirohito. By divine destiny, my country shall destroy the democratic forces of evil in the United States to make way for the new order. And the page, step up to him.
Welcome back, citizens, to an all-new episode of the Batcave Podcast. It's your old bat chum, John S. Drew here. And, yeah, you know, I've been talking about doing the 70s look at Batman. We're doing Electra Woman and Dinah Girl. We've got the upcoming Legion of Superheroes special coming soon. We've also got... Oh, what else are we doing here? Now I'm blanking on this. Oh, the Filmation 77 series as well. Plus, Robert Long and I are doing our reviews of the really bad movies that have been inspired by Batman 66. But there's one other element that we've touched upon at various times in the podcast, and I thought we really should take a look at it, and that being the 1940s serials of Batman and Robin that were produced in 1943 and 1949, because, as many of you know, they are actually what inspired William Dozier, ABC, to do the cliffhanger elements of Batman in the 1960s. Now, I said, if I'm going to do this, I've got to turn to someone with a love for the more pulpier aspects of this serial, and who better to turn to than the man himself from Gotham City, 14 Miles, Mr. Jim Beard. Hey, Jim.
Hey, that's just because Dan Greenfield wasn't available, right? Or Robert Long. Reunited, and it feels so good.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, I'm so honored to be chosen to do this. This is really fun because I have not seen every bit of these serials, so I'm really and it's been a while since I had watched. I know the first one, so I'm really looking forward to this.
I hadn't seen these in a long time, so it was a lot of fun just to start watching them again and sit there and say, I can see little elements of Batman 66 even within these 40 serials.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the moment you start watching it, you can see that it's totally, the connection there is totally there. You know, I want to throw something out here right at the beginning to kind of get past the 800-pound gorilla in the room, and kind of make a commitment to listeners of this podcast, at least from me. You could do whatever you want to do, but you know, you start watching these and you do sort of start cringing right off the bat. And what I mean by that is the signs of the times.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things that I really hate about people who review things from long ago is that they totally look at them through the lens of 2019 or whenever, you know, modern times, and really try to force the sensibilities of today upon them and criticize them for that. When, you know, what I'm going to do is commit to say, I'm not going to try to tear these things apart looking at it from like we wouldn't do that in 2019. Well, of course not. You know, you have to look at these things through the lens of history, and they become fascinating, even though, yes, you know, there are elements that are very hard for us to take here in our, you know, modern times.
Oh, absolutely.
The racism being, you know, the prominent thing of that, but there are some other elements. But you know, I want to try to talk about these things on their own merit, and that doesn't mean that, you know, I don't want to talk about the racism and things like that. But you know, to beat that into the ground is just a non-starter. We all know what these things are like, you know, and we all know that that's wrong now. But at that time, that was what it was, So again, I want to try to look at these things from the history of the character and the actors and everything else that was going on.
Absolutely. I mean, when you think about it, if there was ever a quote-unquote remake of this serial, it would be a very different creature. It is, a product of the times.
Yeah. And, I mean, it absolutely could be done. I mean, World War II era films are made all the time, and there's no denying that our enemies were the Nazis and the Japanese High Command and the Italian High Command to some extent.
Right.
So, but it obviously can be done, and I'll say it again. There are some very fascinating aspects to this.
Oh yeah, yeah. Now, before we get into the review of this episode 1 itself, I just wanted to take a few moments to take a look at one of the main 4 actors who appear in this serial, and I figure we'll do one per of the first 4 episodes. And the first one I want to focus on is Lewis Wilson, who plays Batman Bruce Wayne. Now, he's got, if you look at the surface of it, not that interesting a career. I mean, he appeared in a number of movies, serials. He even did a television series. But there's a little bit more beneath the surface that makes him interesting. He was born in 1920. He died in the year 2000 at the age of 80. What's interesting is, though, his death was prematurely reported in 1966.
Huh.
Yeah.
Very interesing.
Around the time of Batman.
Yeah, you got to wonder if that was fake news of the time, to just to get one more little bit of publicity. It seems macabre, but I don't put things past people.
No, exactly. And what's interesting is that the summer of '66, there were rumors that Adam West was dead.
Wow, now this I've never heard before.
Yeah, my research that I've been doing on the Facebook page, putting up, daily on this day in 1966, as I sort of go through the journey of the show again through the newspapers, I found clippings that said, no, Adam is fine.
Huh.
Yeah.
Oh my! That would have been a huge national day of mourning at that time.
At that time, absolutely, yeah.
I'm looking over Lewis Wilson's credits and marveling at how many roles are uncredited.
Mm-hmm.
What a strange career this man had. He has these more or less bit roles or that he's uncredited in, and then in the middle of all of this, he plays Batman. It's really, really something. And then, like you said, in 1952, he's got this TV series. And then after 54, it looks like I don't know if he retired or...
He did retire. He did retire after that. Although he did make a return to acting in the 60s thanks to Batman, but it wasn't film. He was doing community theater.
Oh, boy. Well, he was only 34 in 1954.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah. Strange career. And, he's serviceable. He's not bad.
No.
But you got to kind of wonder how he may have gotten chosen for his looks.
I'm sure of that. I mean, he is a good looking guy.
Yeah. I'll say, okay. Bruce Wayne, sure. Why not? It definitely wouldn't have been my first choice of the day, but not bad at all. It's his Boston or sort of transatlantic accent that really cracks me up here, and I'm sure back in that time nobody really thought twice about it. But it's a very interesting take on it.
His accent, but I will say his portrayal of Bruce Wayne, I did like the way he played up the whole playboy on board with all this stuff.
Absolutely. My thought exactly. There's some effort there in the script and in what he is doing to separate the two characters. And quite honestly, something that we did not get from Adam in 66. There's very little effort there to separate personalities and characters of Bruce and Batman. It might have been interesting to get a little bit more, lazy playboy out of Adam West, but it is really kind of cool to see it right off the bat here in 1943. Pun intended, to see that. And it made me think of Christopher Reeve playing Superman and Clark.
Yes.
That absolute, 100% I am trying to separate these characters kind of thing. So credit to, the actor and the crew for doing that.
Yep.
This one.
Now, by the way, the TV show you mentioned was Craig Kennedy, criminologist. He played Walt Jameson, a police officer. I did a little digging up, and there is a DVD with episodes. I don't know if it's the complete series, but if anybody was ever interested in finding it, it is on Amazon.
What were you looking at, Craig?
A very attractive blonde. She had her eyes riveted on you, Walt.
Oh, that would be Margaret White. Plays second lead in the picture. Reminds me, she has some information. Might make a good story, huh?
Sure.
Honestly, it's strictly business. She said that...
Yes?
Oh, well, you wouldn't believe me anyway.
Oh, I'm afraid I wouldn't.
I assume it was just a one-season TV series. Lewis he did 26 episodes, and that sounds about like a season's worth.
Yeah.
So I assume it was only that.
And it was a syndicated show, so it could appear anywhere around the country. His one other claim to fame, though, was that he was married to Dana Broccoli or Broccoli, from what I'm hearing now, is actually how you pronounce it, before she met Cubby.
Oh, wow. I'm seeing that now. Separated and divorced.
Yes.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yep.
Wow. Oh, and then their son went on to work on the James Bond series, Michael G. Wilson. Mm-hmm. Fascinating.
Yeah.
And you know what? I got to tell you, Lewis would have made an interesting James Bond.
Yes.
I mean, as far as looks, and if he could have amped up his transatlantic accent, very interesting.
Well, probably a lot better than, what was his name, Barry Crane, in that 1950s TV installment they did.
Right. Good point.
Now, one other thing, too, I just wanted to point out about this particular serial. As I mentioned at the top of the show, this was the inspiration for how to handle Batman on ABC in 1966. The serial itself, though, has an interesting little post note, so to speak, I guess, for post-66 Batman. It was included in a 1974 movie, The Three Stooges' Follies. It was basically one of these films where Hollywood attempted to cash in on the past by repackaging certain things and releasing them that way, sort of like the That's Entertainment thing. It was three Stooges shorts, along with episode 1 of this, Buster Keaton short, and a sing-along with Kate Smith.
Well, that is what we might call varied company.
Yes.
I'm kind of left speechless by that one.
I would love to try and find the VHS on this, because I'd like to see how it was all laid out. Was it a Three Stooges short, then Batman, then and how was it all introduced? Unfortunately, it's only on VHS, and from what I'm seeing, the VHS copy is pretty rare.
Am I wrong? Did they also cut this serial into a movie? Or am I getting that completely wrong?
No, I think they did. I mean, I know that if you go on YouTube, you can find a movie version of this, but I don't know how much of that is people doing it together. But no. In the 60s, you either saw the whole 15 installments, because here's the thing, too. When Batman 66 came out, just prior to it, about 6 months before, and for a good part of 1966, movie theaters around the country were showing the original serial. And you'd either go in and see it in the 15 installments or the 300-minute movie version.
See, there you go. And then there's the legend about this being shown at the Playboy Mansion.
Yes.
And that supposedly being another way of inspiration to the 66 series, because everybody was encouraged to, laugh or hiss or boo, at certain points, and they all, really enjoyed it. But whether that's, I don't know if that's ever been proven to be true or not.
So basically, it was Rocky Horror Picture before Rocky Horror Picture.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think we should bring it back. No, I can't imagine this thing being shown again.
Hey, you never know. You never know.
Yeah, you know. Well, again, you put a little disclaimer at the beginning of it, and you say, this is a product of its times, and just roll with it, and we all roll with it.
Right. Exactly. As long as you don't walk away wanting to impersonate Dr. Daka, we're good.
Yeah, no cosplay.
Right.
There's an interesting footnote that Dr. Daka did reappear somewhere.
Oh.
Roy Thomas used him in All-Star Squadron, the comic book that was set during World War II.
Wow.
And in the story, the story was actually set in 1942, the year before when this serial takes place, and supposedly was what Dr. Daka was up to before the events of this serial.
Oh.
Yeah, very interesting.
Yeah, that definitely is.
I really want to talk about Dr. Daka as we go along here.
Well, let's get into discussing this installment itself.
High atop one of the hills which ring the teeming metropolis of Gotham City, a large house rears its bulk against the dark sky. Outwardly, there's nothing to distinguish this house from many others. But deep in the cavernous basements of this house, in a chamber hewn from the living rock of the mountain, is the strange, dimly lighted, mysteriously secret Bat's Cave, hidden headquarters of America's #1 crime fighter, Batman. Yes, Batman, clad in the somber costume which has struck terror to the heart of many a swaggering denizen of the underworld. Batman, who even now is pondering the plans of a new assault against the forces of crime. A crushing blow against evil in which he will have the valuable aid of his young, two-fisted assistant, Robin, the Boy Wonder.
Episode 1, The Electrical Brain. According to IMDb, this was released July 16th, 1943. But then if you look, it also says all the installments were released July 16th, 1943. I'm going to assume that that's the first date, and then each additional date afterwards is what follows. We're given stately Wayne Manor right from the start as the announcer tells us about Batman and the Batcave and how they love their country and they fight the Axis, even now that there are...
The Bat's Cave.
That's true, even from the beginning.
And this is the first appearance of the Batcave. It had not appeared in comic books. That's another utterly fascinating element. Yes, the bats. I keep saying Bat's Cave. Yeah, the Bat Cave.
Yeah,
debuted here in this serial, and as legend tells us that Bob Kane and Bill Finger were then inspired to put that into the comic book, and even the way back and forth into the Batcave in Wayne Manor through the grandfather clock.
Wow, I thought they took that from the comic.
No, it's the other way around. Let that one sink in there for a while. And then the other fascinating aspect of this is that this actually influenced the look of Alfred. Alfred premiered in the comic book as a roly-poly, short, fat British, butler. And because of the actor William Austin, who unfortunately is uncredited in this, but because of his look, this thinner, taller guy with the mustache, that's why Alfred became the Alfred that we know today in the comics.
See, I read the issue when Alfred sort of reappears and he's like he went to a fat farm or something like that.
I think that's the case. Now it's been a while since I read that, but so again, this serial has historical importance in more ways than one.
Wow. That is so cool. And of course, this Batcave isn't very, what's the word I'm looking for? Functional.
Well, it's certainly no 66 Batcave.
Right.
But what can be, what possibly could be the Batman 66 Batcave? But yeah, it looks like a lot of the budget maybe went to this Batcave, because there certainly isn't any other sets that are very impressive in it. Let's take a moment here and just note, it is obvious that not very much money was put into this serial.
No.
Which is unfortunate, being that it is the very first Batman ever on film. It's interesting to me because this is only 4 years after the debut of Batman in comic books. Only 4 years. So in some ways it speaks to the popularity of the character in a very short time.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
But Columbia, even though supposedly they promoted this thing very well, they just didn't feel like putting any real budget into it. And it's pretty much a standard serial that just happens to have a couple guys running around in costumes in it in many ways. And it's those moments when you really get some sort of feeling of a superhero or comic book movie that it really shines. And then it kind of goes back to this standard, gangsters running around and whatever sort of a thing.
Now, do you know the status of the serial in terms of who owns the rights to it? Is it still Columbia? Because I'm curious about that. Like the way Batman 66, they had to jump through hoops for Warner to get it released and such. Yeah, they have the Superman serials on the DC universe, and I thought, I'll be able to find Batman there. No, I had to go to YouTube.
Yeah, well, my guess is that obviously somebody owns, DC still would have at least part ownership in it. Whether, Columbia does, I assume that they do. But no, there's no way that DC is going to put this thing up because of the racial aspects of it. I just cannot even imagine. At one point, it was shown somewhere with all the racial stuff clipped out. That's a much bigger discussion about whether that's trying to whitewash history there. But yeah, I assume that it's still joint ownership, just like the Batman TV show. Mm-hmm. I can't imagine. It's obviously not public domain,
right?
Because of Batman in it. But yeah, it's an interesting question.
Well, we open with our dynamic duo dropping off two criminals at the corner of First and Maple, and Batman makes a call in the police box to Captain Arnold to come pick them up.
Yeah, and Captain Arnold.
Captain Arnold.
Captain Arnold. Yeah, I've thrilled to the many adventures of Captain Arnold in the comic books. And what? Oh, that's just another one of these little head scratchers. The screenwriters and what they were thinking of at the time or not thinking of. You can tell that this is a day and an era where the licensors are not that involved in the project.
Right.
Whether this was passed through DC, whether Bob Kane had any input in it at all, is a good question, because it's so funny. You have Bruce Wayne and you have Dick Grayson and you have Alfred, and then you have a bunch of characters, made up for this serial. Commissioner Gordon is in like the first panel of the very first Batman story ever. Why he is not in this, and it's this Captain Arnold, is a head scratcher. That all that is typing a name in a script. Mm-hmm. A very easy thing to do. And, it's like, why do you have Alfred, but you don't have Commissioner Gordon? It's a good question.
See, I'm reading right now the series. I'm up to like 41, and to me, from what I'm seeing, well, Alfred hasn't even appeared on the scene yet in 41, which is then interesting. Yeah, that does beg the question. But Gordon didn't seem to play a major role in the Batman stories at that point, in 41 anyway.
Sure. But I'm going to guess that if Bob Kane and Bill Finger were asked for their input, that they would have said, well, we have this police character, and I take it back. Linda Page, I don't know whether they're boyfriend, girlfriend, or they're actually supposedly engaged in this serial. She is actually a comic book character, and I should have said that. She's actually follows the character of Julie Madison, who was Bruce's first fiancée. But at least it's weird they use Linda Page, but not Commissioner Gordon. But you could be right. It could be that he was just under the radar at that point.
Right. Now I like this. After they drop him off, Robin is the one driving the car, and we can't call it the Batmobile. It's just the car.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Well, I'm trying to remember when the first Batmobile appeared. It actually was a car at first,
yes.
Meaning a regular car, just referred to as the Batmobile, and then finally one appeared that actually had a bat look to it. I'm trying to remember exactly when that was, but I'm going to guess if there was a bat looking car in the comic books at that time, that they just didn't want to put any of the budget, to that.
Right. Yeah. Now, before Batman and Robin leave them, though, we learn they are the last members of the Collins gang, but they give Batman a warning about Dr. Daka. Who is he? We'll learn soon enough.
What's funny is this is a really cool example of, and I'm going to murder how this is pronounced, in media res, the Latin for like in the middle of the action.
Right.
And it's a fun little thing. One of the things that I do want to point out is I love the very first shot of Batman in this, that tracking shot into the Batcave.
Yes.
And Batman sitting at his desk, that they somehow hauled this desk down into the Batcave. But him sitting there with his hands up to his face, his elbows on the desk, and apparently in very deep thought.
Yes.
And the dramatic narration there.
And the bats.
And the bats, and then the mention of Robin. And Robin comes bounding in, this little ball of light, and big smiles suddenly all around, and they rush out together. There's something very cool about that opening. I really like that, because you're getting a sort of a somber, thoughtful Batman. You wonder, what kind of things, detective things could he be thinking of? And then his, junior partner bounds in and with a big smile on his face, and that makes Batman smile, and they rush out together to go fight crime. It's a nice little picture again of the time, and I really did appreciate that shot. And then we get this where they've been battling the Collins gang, but we haven't seen it.
Right.
It reminds me of the opening of third season of Adam West Batman.
Right.
When they rush back into the Batcave in the Batmobile and say that they've just defeated Catwoman again.
Yes. Yeah. That whole thing, too, with the opening is a nice little touch to the comics in general, because wasn't the whole idea of Robin to sort of lighten Batman a little because they thought he was getting too dark?
Yeah, absolutely. Robin comes in after roughly a year worth of Batman stories.
There's some nice touches, too. I like the fact that the crooks have these Batman logos on their foreheads to identify as he's the one who caught them.
Now, talk about your pulp connection there, because there was various pulp characters that would do the same thing. The Spider had a little emblem that he impressed upon his victims, I guess. So that is a very nice touch, because that's not something from the comic books. So, yes, again, a really, really nice pulp touch. You kind of wish it was nighttime, though, when they drop these criminals off.
Yeah. Not a whole lot, at least so far from what I've seen, not a whole lot of night shooting.
No, I'm only going to, I don't know, I'm going to assume that it was difficult to shoot at night.
Yeah.
And I mean, even all the way up into the 60s when look at all the different times when we did the Green Hornet TV show, how many times they just put a filter on there to make it nighttime. But it must have something to do with that. I'm not sure. Do we want to talk about the costumes at this point?
We can, sure.
You start.
I mean, you want to talk about a document of the times? There's the costumes for you. They're serviceable. I mean,
yeah. The proposition here is never before had a Batman costume had to be made.
Right.
They obviously have the comic book to look at, but that's a 2-dimensional document. You're looking at that cowl, starting at the most important thing. You're looking at that cowl, but it needs to be in 3 dimensions, obviously. It's a really interesting, I'm going to keep using that word, it's an interesting take on it, that the severe dip of the front of that cowl is way off the charts. It's almost as if they were looking more at his first year of Adventures Without Robin. He becomes stouter and thicker of a character as the years go on, and the mask is more. I don't know. I'm trying to think of the word. It wraps around his face, more. That severe point in the front, like it is in this one, in the serial, is really something, because they could have had much better eye holes without that huge, severe point. And it makes me wonder if they actually how much they worked with the cowl. But I can only give Lewis Wilson credit. I mean, we know all the stories from Adam West about working with the cowl and trying to see out from it. But this thing, I can't. It doesn't look like you can see out of it at all.
Right.
For that matter, and it had to have slipped. At least with Adam, it was conformed to the front of his face. It actually had a nose piece, that fit on his, nose. I can't imagine it was slipping around very much. But this thing, and yeah, they had the whole problem with the ears. How do you do that when you're only looking at this 2-dimensional drawing on a page, and you're trying to figure out, okay, are those flat things that stick up from his head? Are they 3-dimensional things? And it did. It came out to look more like horns, and that becomes even worse in the 1949 serial, where they look more like devil's horns. So the rest of it is not bad. The look is absolutely there. Boots, tights, shorts, the belt, it's all there. Cape with the scallop on the ends. It's materials. It's very thick material for the body suit. So it bunches up. But really the worst problem of all, but they're still having this problem in 66, is the cape. It's the moment Lewis Wilson starts moving, that cape is not just like, it's wrapping around him, and it's wrapping around his arms immediately, and I mean wrapping around his arms.
But the thing is, because I noticed that too, it doesn't happen with Robin as much.
Yeah, it's funny. I didn't really. Yeah, I guess it's. I got to tell you, I'm looking more at Batman in this than Robin. At least in Adam's time, they got the idea of pinning it to his back and to his shoulders, and even then, it still tended to, kind of collapse into like a wet towel sort of a thing. But yeah, it's a real shame that they did not think of that, to do something like that, because that cape is his absolute enemy. Forget Dr. Daka, you know.
Forget Dr. Yeah.
Yeah, the cape is his enemy in this. I can only imagine he just abhorred that cape.
No.
I don't know if there's any interviews with Lewis Wilson about doing this, but he had to have had, you know, the worst problems with that thing.
Now, let me ask you one thing, though. Is it true that it was the 1949 costume that Adam wore in the test footage?
It's somehow like inspired by that.
Okay.
To me, it looks like the only real transfer is the chest emblem.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't think it's the actual one. It's definitely not the cowl. It's his later cowl, although they worked on the ears, you know, somewhat more. But I love it because it is that actual bat emblem from there that actually has the lines drawn in it, and it's big. It would have been an interesting way to go had they not come up with the so-called new look symbol with the yellow oval around it. And you know, Robin's costume going back to the serial is not bad until you get to the mask, and I'm telling you, you know, that mask just screams no budget.
Yeah,
it's one of those classic domino masks that you walk into the drugstore and buy, and wow, you know, with an example in the comic books of a simple band around the head with eye holes cut in it, and somebody said whether or not they tried it and it just kept slipping, they couldn't get it to hold, I don't know, and somebody just said get one of those masks, those oval masks. What do we want to talk about Robin's hair? Is that a separate podcast?
Well, I mean, we can
in itself.
Well, I mean, we could. You talk about the mask and the mask being distracting. I think the hair is more distracting.
I think it is too. Okay, I will not impress 2019 sensibilities on his hair because I don't think anybody back then had hair like that. I
was going to say, yeah.
You look around and there's nobody else in this serial that has hair like that. You know, everything that I've ever watched from the 1940s that had quote unquote young people in it, they had, you know, Brill creamed hair. Look at Andy Hardy. You know, it had a little wave to it to show that he was, you know, a little bit of a rebellious youth there, just a little bit of a wave or, you know, a little curl to it. I don't know what Croft, I don't know what his hair is. It's almost like I don't know. It's like he has a permanent, or it's almost like an afro or something.
He looks like he could be a Brady.
Yes. And God love him, but he looks like he's, you know, 21 or something in this. You know, but well, somebody else was 21 when he played Robin too, right?
Well, okay, I was going to save this for the next episode when we talk about him. He was actually 17.
Okay, all right. Which in itself is way too old.
Well, yeah.
I'd love to know how he got the part. He's not an actor.
No.
His acting is just not. I mean, honestly, with Burt Ward not being much of an actor, he did a fine job as Robin. But Douglas Croft, God love him, he needed some more coaching there. You know, whereas we might say Lewis Wilson was serviceable, yeah, Doug just, he wasn't bringing it.
Well, after they've done this, they head home and such, and we cut to later or the next day, I'm not entirely sure, where Bruce and Dick arrive at Linda's office. She works at the hospital.
You've had your usual busy day, I suppose.
Yep. Up at the crack of noon, a brisk walk to the corner, and then the club for a rugged afternoon of gin rummy.
Maybe you'll be too tired to go with me tomorrow to meet Uncle Martin.
No, I'll be right with you.
Thanks. Oh, it'll mean so much to him to know that he still has his friends despite all that trouble he was in.
Only do me a favor. Let's not start too early. I'm always tired in the morning.
All right.
She's a doctor, right?
Or an assistant.
Or an assistant.
I don't think she's a doctor. I think she's more like a doctor's assistant.
Okay. Yeah. Because that's never really full. That's the one thing, too. You sort of got to, fill in some of the gaps when you're with some of these scenes and things, and you look and go, well, what is your role, or what does this mean? I don't think it was all, and it's interesting too, because this is the first episode, and the first episode of these serials usually tend to be twice as long. So you'd think there'd be more exposition, but no.
Yeah. Well, talk about roles here. Look at the roles of Batman and Robin in this. If you read things online, I think they're reading a little bit more into it, or at least right now at this point, you don't get this in the very first one, that they're supposedly more thought to be government agents. Yes,
I saw that, and I was waiting for it.
And there was some kind of thing that I saw online that said that this was supposedly because in 1943 they didn't want to show characters taking the law into their own hands. And it's like, no. Like, I think there were other serials with characters at the time that would be, doing this sort of thing. I don't think that in the Captain Marvel serial that he was an agent of the police or anything like that. He's very much taking the law into his own hands. It shows it right off the bat with the police acting chagrined over, like, boy, we wish we could get him on the force. But we can't. You find him, I'll put him on the force. That sort of thing. Yeah, I think that means he's a vigilante, guys. This is also something that's fascinating to me. During the war years, the Batman comic did not often veer into war-era stories. If you read through the war years in the comic books, there's not a lot of mention of the war going on or Batman, having any sort of peripheral involvement in it at all. It's not one of those comics where that happened. There's way more comics at that time where characters are fighting Nazis constantly, or they're overseas in Europe doing that. Batman was not that patriotic of a character in the way it was written. I'm not saying the character himself was not, I'm sure, but it's a really kind of a really interesting part of the history of Batman. I think there was probably more Superman stories that had, the war as an element in the story. So that's what's interesting about this serial, is that it is entirely about what's going on at the time.
I liked, though, because you couldn't do the serial without having some mention of the war at this point in time. Sure.
I mean, yeah, it was on everybody's mind. Whether the comic book was truly meant to be at that time more escapism than others. Other comics at the time, that Batman sort of just lived in a little universe all of his own that was, apart from what was going on in the war. I don't know. But this is very, very much as we get to closer to Dr. Daka, which we will learn.
Now, I did like the whole time they're in the office, Bruce is playing up the board Playboy, and he also plays off the fact he's not impressed with Batman. Little things like that really show the distinction, like you were saying before. We also learned that Linda is going to meet with her uncle Martin Warren, who's getting out of jail the next day, and she wants Bruce to come with her.
Yeah. I do want to call out Dick's comment to Bruce about...
You're liable to carry that masquerade too far.
Think so?
Yes, I do. Why don't you let her know who you really are instead of letting her think you're just a good-for-nothing playboy?
Well, if she knew I was the Batman, she might worry. Not that she cares anything about me. Besides, on account of our special assignment from Uncle Sam, our success depends on keeping our identity a secret.
And suppose she asks you about your status in the Army?
Well, I always tell her I'm a 4F.
Someday you'll take this role too far.
Yeah.
It's a funny little comment. If only Douglas Croft could have delivered it a little bit better. But it is a fun, why don't you just tell her who you are? Well, do you really want that to happen, Dick?
Well, for someone who's supposed to be, the 15-year-old, he sounds a lot wiser.
Yeah. And I want to call out, why don't you tell her who you really are? What does what does that mean? That to me shows that, again, Bruce is the mask the true character is Batman.
Right. Yeah.
It's a very interesting line. I don't know if they meant it that way at the time. I don't think they knew, they're just writing this stuff but that's a very interesting comment. Why don't you tell her who you really are?
Yeah.
Meaning you're really Batman. You're really not Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, Bruce died in that alley years ago.
Well, so they say.
So they say, yeah. So we cut to the next day where Warren is getting out of prison and he's picked up by a trio of men who offer to take him to Linda. As they drive off, we see the three now, Bruce, Dick, and Linda, arriving in the car driven by Alfred.
Yay. Alfred.
Do you know
he's fun in this. I get a kick out of him. He's kind of mousy in a way,
right?
But I get a real kick out of him.
He's mousy, but at the same time, he's always willing to pitch in and help.
Yes, very much so. And there was a moment or two where I saw Alan Napier.
Yes,
in that very much so. Because the same way, like I want to help Master Bruce, and that sort of thing. Yeah, very much so. Well, whether Alan Napier had any idea of this serial and William Austin's performance, I don't know.
Yeah,
but it's nice. Again, you get some echoes of it there.
I warmed to him almost immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, he's the comedy relief,
right?
Let's put it bluntly. He's the comedy relief here, which is okay.
Yeah. So they follow after the car, and the car carrying Warren manages to change color. I did like this effect. They change up the license plate, flip it, and they go from a dark car to a white car as they round a corner and then turn back and pass them out without anybody realizing it.
I love this sequence.
Yeah.
I really do love it. And it's very effective. It is very well done.
Yeah.
For the low budget of this thing, it's not a bad effect at all.
No.
And honestly, I'm not sure how they did it.
I don't either.
When it started happening, I thought, oh, yeah, that's this sequence. And I'm like looking at it, and it's like, it's not like they filmed the white car and the dark car and then did some kind of a wipe, with the film or cut really quickly and put a mist over it or something. It's a smooth change. My only thought is that they did one of these things where it's painted in a certain way and they used a certain kind of light in the studio, and the light comes on and it changes the color. A similar sort of thing was done in one of the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde movies, where the actor, they have done this on stage before, the actor actually has this dark makeup on his face already, but in a certain light you cannot see it. Mm-hmm. And then when they change the light, suddenly that you can see that and it looks like he changes. And I have a feeling that maybe something like that was done here. Maybe a listener out there will prove me completely wrong. But it is a nice effect.
Yeah. Okay, so they get away. They pull up to a amusement attraction in Little Tokyo, and this is where it gets a little uncomfortable.
This was part of a foreign land transplanted bodily to America and known as Little Tokyo. Since a wise government rounded up the shifty-eyed Japs, it has become virtually a ghost street where only one business survives, eking out a precarious existence on the dimes of curiosity seekers.
This is propaganda in full effect. Something that is, well, I was going to say nearly alien today, but that's not actually true either.
No,
it's just changed in the in the way it's done. It's a stunning thing that at that time would have just been another line of diet, another narrator's line. And I'm sure nobody in that theater, with the children in that theater, probably didn't think twice about it.
No.
Yep, Jap's gone.
Yeah.
move along, whatever. And then you go into the ride.
Yes.
And it's all, it's the House of Horrors, except the horrors are Japanese soldiers, capturing and imprisoning Americans.
Yep.
You have to guess that there probably were real houses of horrors like this around the country, to show this thing. Now, one of the things that we didn't mention is the director of this serial.
No.
Which is Lambert Hillier, who actually directed one of my most favorite movies of all time, and definitely one of my top favorite Universal monster movies, Dracula's Daughter, which is interesting to me because it was before this. And this movie, the direction is nearly non-existent, meaning that there's really nothing to speak of in the way this is directed. And it makes me wonder if Lambert Hillier's fortunes had fallen, by this time, that he has to pick up serial work. Those guys back then, they were workhorses. They did, so many things, one after another. And that speaks to sometimes why there's nothing going on here, because they did them so fast. But I do really like that he put the camera on the little car to go through the tunnels of the House of Horrors. And I thought that was a nice touch. Like, it's set up behind the actors,
right,
as it goes through the tunnels. And again, here's another little bit of the budget being shown here, that they had to build this, this House of Horrors. Unless this set was sitting around, I don't know.
Yeah, that's the thing. Was it sitting around? Was it, because they do show the outside facade. Maybe that was a real attraction.
Yeah, it could have been. I don't know, but it is. I think it's scary to us, yet in a different way.
Well, yeah,
it was scary back then.
Yeah,
and then for no apparent reason, the one figure is a live person. That he's acting like he's a mannequin,
right?
Or at least at this point, we don't know. I mean, he's a guard, I guess, but it just seems a funny little, non sequitur that it's like, does that guy got to stand there like a statue for how long? Like literally all day long.
Right. Yeah. So they bring Warren, off the ride then and into this meeting room. It's like deep within the ride itself, where Dr. Daka is sitting at a table of men.
I am Dr. Daka, humble servant of His Majesty Hirohito, heavenly ruler and prince of the rising sun. By divine destiny, my country shall destroy the democratic forces of evil in the United States to make way for the new order, an order that will bring about the liberation of the enslaved people of America. Each of these men, dishonored by your corrupt form of government, is a specialist in his line and have been especially selected by me to execute the orders I received from Tokyo. We need an industrialist to round out our circle. That is why I've selected you. If you cooperate with us willingly, you shall share in the glorious victory soon to be ours.
And if I refuse?
You have no choice but to accept. You will work with us or be compelled to work for us. Therefore, it should be very plain to you that you should be willing to help serve my glorious emperor.
Listen, Daka, or whatever your name is, I owe my allegiance to no country or order but my own. I'm an American first and always, and no amount of torture conceived by your twisted oriented brain will make me change my mind.
But you are laboring under a great misapprehension. I do not believe in anything so barbaric as torture.
Whew, so many things.
Yeah.
So many things here. Real quick before Dr. Daka, I like the concept of this council. I wish it was used a little more effectively.
Yes.
But I like the concept of the council of dishonored men and the way they get introduced.
Yes.
Is very interesting. I wish they had a little bit more personality. This is one of those things that ended up in Green Hornet. And if you remember, we talked about it. There's at least 2 episodes where there's a sort of council of criminals. And I don't know what it is. I love that idea. I guess it's just that I like team ups so much in comic books, where you loved it when it was the Legion of Doom, or the Injustice League, and who was arrayed around the table, Mirror Master, Gorilla Grodd, and that sort of thing. Imagine if they had actually used real Batman villains in this, Please to let me introduce, the Penguin, the Joker, Tweedledum and Tweedledee.
Yeah.
But anyways, so that leads to Dr. Daka.
Yeah. And
and
as of Daka himself, I mean, you did a little impression there. I will say this much: he could have laid it on a lot more thick, and he wasn't that bad.
You know what's funny? I said this to my wife. I said, you know what he's doing? He's more like Peter Lorre than a Japanese criminal, mastermind. I said, all I'm hearing is him doing Peter Lorre. And she goes, no, he's doing Peter Lorre as Mr. Moto.
Oh.
And I went, oh, that's brilliant. I said, yeah, it's like, I don't know what, you're not sure what exactly he's doing.
Right.
He is so odd in this that you can't, you kind of hang on his every, lispy syllable in this thing. And I can't help but really listen intently to his voice every time he talks, because again, that whatever that he thought he was doing is not, it's not even really like a stereotypical Japanese accent. It's so odd. But I guess again, it's really increases J. Carroll Naish's presence with that. And I love it when he's talking more or less normally, which is normal for the character. And then when he stands up and he starts, it's almost like he pulls out the Japanese high command manual and he starts that like, for the glory of the whatever, and the new order, it's like he's spouting this thing, like he's memorized this little speech, and then he sits back down and kind of goes back into his languid, normal speech. It's a really weird moment.
Right.
and wait, and here's, I don't know if you thought of this at all. He has a Buddha behind him, which really is more Chinese than Japanese. Again, I think it's like they have these things laying around like, oh, we have to decorate this guy's lair. Hey, we got this Buddha statue. Yeah, perfect. They don't care whether, they didn't, it's like, it's the Japs. They didn't care whether or not that was a Japanese sort of thing or not. It just looked, yellow. Asian,
right.
Everyone, just throw it back there. It looks great. It's big and huge. Yeah, it's wonderful. It's exotic, and it'll just throw it in there. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, like you say, it's also this whole thing of it's Asian. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, right. It's over and over and over. It's when you see some thought put into this serial is when it bumps up a little bit.
Right.
But mostly what you see is we have to get this thing done. Mm-hmm. And most serials, were like that. They're almost that poverty row, mentality, and let's get these things done.
Right. Now, Warren will not give in. He will not join this council of disgraced men.
Will not, and good for him.
Yep. But Daka has what he hopes will be a way of persuading him. He brings in Bob, Warren's partner, and Bob has been turned. Bob, yeah, that's all he said was because Warren goes and goes, Bob.
Yeah,
and I'm like, okay. So, and this is all part of that whole inaction thing already, already in progress type thing you're talking about, because we don't need to know Bob's background. We don't even need to know his last name. No. We don't know entirely what Warren did wrong. We just know that he served his time.
Right.
And as far as he's concerned, he's done. So, Bob,
I almost thought at one point that they were going to say that Uncle Warren was accused unjustly and went to prison for a crime he didn't really commit. But they didn't go down that road.
No. Now Bob has been turned
Martin.
into.
I keep saying Warren. It's Martin.
Right. It's Martin. Well, so unfortunately, that's a very unfortunate name, Martin Warren.
Yeah, yes.
That's as bad as John Drew.
You said it.
I said it, yep. Well, Bob has been turned into a zombie because he refused to work for DACA. But Warren still refuses, even at the sight of this, so he's taken to DACA's laboratory.
Yeah. And full credit for the use of the term zombie.
Yes.
So this is a serial that zombie fans need to actually seek out.
Yes.
If they're going to watch everything that ever said zombie in it.
Right.
And what's interesting is that at this time in the movies, what you might call more supernatural zombies was the thing. Mm-hmm. And scientific zombies kind of came later, or at least their popularity. So these are scientific zombies. It's not a drug. It's not any kind of voodoo or anything like that. It's actually an electronic device,
right?
To turn them into what Dr. DACA calls zombies, which is interesting.
Yeah.
He does need to apply some Japanese know-how and miniaturize that device.
Yes.
Though. It's way too big. It's just way too big.
Well, but that's the thing. He wants to make a bigger one.
Right. Yeah, right.
He wants to make a bigger one, but he needs the radium to power the thing, and he knows that Warren knows where that radium's being kept, so he forces him into telling him where it is. And what a coincidence, it's at the hospital.
Yeah, incredible coincidence.
Oh, my God. So he sends his men out to go get the radium.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Back at Linda's office at the hospital, Linda's there chastising Bruce for not being on time to pick up Warren. I mean, he had made the promise. He said he'd be there to new him and all this. And what happened? Because he was late, that's how come they lost Warren.
I love Bruce for really following through on his Playboy act. And even when he makes a promise, he doesn't follow through on. And then something bad happens.
Right. DACA's men with a zombie Dr. Heath. I guess he was one of the disgraced men, or he was just somebody else. That was the one thing I lost a little track because, like you say, we got the council, and they explained it, but since they don't seem to play a major role, I didn't take note. So I don't know if this was one of the dishonored or if this is just somebody else who didn't play ball, so they're using him.
That's my assumption is whoever won't go along with it, they become the zombies.
Right.
And if you do go along with it, you get to be one of the council members.
Right. And apparently once you become a zombie, because DACA did say this at one point, or one of the guys did, you become very strong.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's a bonus.
Yeah.
You lose all your will and conscious thought.
Right.
But you become very strong.
Yep. They also point out that DACA is watching their every action through an electronic eye, whatever that is.
Yeah. Well, there's one point where it's one of those impossible viewpoint things.
Right.
It's like, where is the camera supposedly that, and how did it get set up where it's set up to show the scene that it's showing?
Right.
Yeah, don't worry about it. Move along. It's a serial. Let's get to the end.
That's it.
Got to get to the cliffhanger.
Well, we got Bruce stepping out of the hospital, and he sees that one of the guys, he recognizes them as one of the guys from the car, so he decides Batman is needed. He and Dick go into a nearby alley. Alfred drives them in there, and they change.
Yeah.
So we then cut to inside where the men surprise Linda, and then they surprise and kill a doctor who walks in on them.
That poor guy.
Yeah. But we get to see the gun in action as they shoot the safe with the radium.
Yes, and thank goodness 86% of the budget was used for the gun effect.
Mm-hmm.
The 86% of the entire cereal.
Wait a minute, are you kidding me?
No. Yes, I am kidding.
Oh, okay.
But it looks like it.
It does.
You know, thank goodness there is actually some sort of lightning effect.
Yes.
With this thing, you know, and it looks good, actually. It's weird, again, weird choices of where to use the special effects budget. But I love it. No, it was like, yeah, it's a cool gun. All right.
Yep.
Shoots lightning and stuff.
Now, I gotta wonder, was this an inspiration for the first episode of the 66 series? Because Batman and Robin come smashing through the window.
The Batman! Come on.
They chase after the men, and all the while dodging rays from the gun.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, you have some hope for cool Batman action at this point.
Yep.
And you know what? The fights are not too dissimilar from the later 66 fights.
They're not too dissimilar. They're a little bit, I don't know which way it is. If they're too sped up, I think, or Batman's is a little too choreographed and slowed down.
Yeah, good point.
You know?
My major criticism, and I think it's a valid one because it's an absolute choice by the screenwriters, producers, everybody involved, is Batman and Robin are fairly ineffectual in a fight.
Yeah.
You laugh.
Yeah.
But to me, as a Batman fan, it's hard. That's hard to watch.
Right.
Because they're not like that at this time in the comic books. Now, I get it. Batman cannot win every single time, you know, or becomes Superman, I guess. But they take as many lumps as they give, if not more. Mm-hmm. There is a way that it could be done. And it was done. I mean, yes, in the Adam West show, they obviously take their lumps too, but not nearly as much as these two do. Mm-hmm. You can still have them look cool in a fight and the bad guys overpower them.
Section 1, go ahead.
Dr. Dacker, the cops are heading for the hospital.
You get the radio.
Yeah? I got the stuff. It's in the truck. I'm starting back now.
Return at once.
And they're not working together. One of the fun things about Adam West and Burt Ward is their Batman and Robin worked together so often in fights.
Yep.
And yeah, I get it. Robin got overpowered a lot because he's a kid, you know. And I did appreciate that Douglas Croft's Robin is wading right in, you know, as much as the others, which is, it's funny. It's like he's just about as tall as the bad guys in this. But yeah, just it's like, no, yeah, just a little bit more of give Batman and Robin a little more of an edge here.
Right. Yeah, well, this first fight scene is a good example because Robin's off on one side of the building sort of fighting, and Batman kind of gets pushed away, and he's fighting the zombie and everything. And this is weird, too, because in the fight, okay, one of the men gets away with the radium, so radium is secured by Daka. Daka's watching the whole fight with the electric eye. He orders the zombie, though, who has Batman pretty much on the ropes, to jump off the building.
I don't know if I wasn't paying attention well enough, but I'm still not absolutely certain the point behind that.
Yeah. No, I don't either.
You would think it was a distraction.
Maybe.
But a distraction to, you know, for what?
Well, the cops were approaching because Linda had called the cops.
Okay.
So maybe it's like they're running over to the body and they're dealing with that while...
It's not clear at all.
No, it's not. But then again, this is what I said about the serial, is that certain things happen and you're like, why did that? A little explanation, a line. It just seemed almost rushed.
It could have come from Dr. Daka. He could have said, you know, the police are on their way. We need a distraction,
right?
You know, or something like that. You know, we cannot have the police involved in this matter. You know, or something like that.
Right.
Now that said, that it's a dramatic element that he can command a guy to jump off a roof to his death.
Yeah.
That's, you know, that's a super villain kind of a thing right there. So, that ramps up his villainy. But yeah, it's like it's just not very clear the purposes behind that. And then we kind of go back to, and then they have Batman and get him up there and ready to throw him off, and again it's like, come on, Batman, you're better than this, please.
But for whatever reason he jumps off, but two of the other men start finishing up what the zombie did with Batman and managed to throw him off the roof.
Yeah.
As we come to the end of part 1.
Yeah. I love the quick shot of him falling.
Yes.
Yeah. Because I don't know if you saw this, you watch it and, it's obviously that they have him on strings,
right,
or whatever. But it's both kind of cool and kind of funny.
Yeah.
Dopey, 1943 serial special effects, but he's falling and his damn cape is doing the same things, but he actually reaches up and pushes the cape off back from his shoulders. Mm-hmm. All I could think of was, man, Batman keeps his cool even while falling off a building. He's going to fix his cape. Mm-hmm. Watch it next time. Watch that scene. It happens very quick.
That's got to be one hell of a tall building, though, because the way the floors are just zooming past as he falls, yeah. I'm thinking he should have hit the ground by now.
It's like in cartoons. It's like in the Flintstones, when they're running through the house, and the house is like a block long because it just the walls and doors and furniture just keep going. It's in a loop like
right.
It's that same sort of thing. Yeah, it's like, it's a tall building, but fantastic example of a 1940s movie serial cliffhanger.
Right. Yep.
Batman pushed off a building and he's falling to his death. Come back next week, kids, to see him as a bloody pulp on the street. Right? We'll see you then. Yeah.
Time for the cartoon.
Yeah, and I want to talk to any child who at that time thought that Batman was going to die. Honestly, it's like, you show me that person. His name was probably Mark Waid. Mark Waid, the DC, the comic book writer, right, once told me that when he watched Robin being eaten by a giant clam in 1966-67, that he honestly was afeared for Robin's life, and it was all he could do to wait until the next episode to see what happened. So it does work on some kids, I guess.
Right.
Yeah. And of course, kids in 1943 were not as jaded as we are.
Well, there's now. That too.
Yeah. But it's a heck of a. You don't get a better textbook cliffhanger than that.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. No, good first start here. I mean, I'm not gonna get into ratings and things because that's just we'll do like a general overall what we thought of the serial when we get to the end. But this was a solid first installment.
Yeah. What it is this, and I'll say it again. It is a solid. I'll use your word. It's a solid serial chapter of the 40s, of the time, that happens to have guys dressed up like Batman and Robin in it.
Yeah.
Perfectly serviceable, guys in suits, as, gangsters, guys in suits, running around doing things like stealing radium and things like that. Gets a little bump up from an over-the-top villain, which, most of the serials had to have that. Not a mystery villain, as many of them had at the time, who was the Red Hood or whatever. But I think it would be interesting if you just sort of squint and imagine that it's the Joker instead of Dr. Taka.
Well, that's going to do it. But before we head on out of here, I just want to take a moment, Jim. Yeah. What's going on? What's going on with the writing? What's going on with this Batman book? Tell us about this podcast.
Are you saying it like you're saying it like what the hell are you doing?
No, not like that. But you've got a lot going on here. I mean, we could have a podcast just on that.
Yeah. New Batman book coming out finally. The goal is August. Because there will be a very cool thing called BatCon in Logansport, Indiana, hosted by Mark Raykop of Fiberglass Freaks, the official builders of the official 1966 Batmobiles that you can buy. He celebrated 15 years in business last year and had a BatCon then, and everybody loved it, and we had such a great time that we twisted his arm to do one again this year for the 80th anniversary of Batman, and he is doing it. So it's in August. They have a Facebook page. I'm trying to get the book done so that I can debut it at the show. And the name of the book is Zlonk Zak Zowie, The Subterranean Blue Grotto Guide to Batman 66 Season 1. Basically what we're doing is to say it's an episode guide is doing it an injustice.
Oh yeah,
it's volume 1. It's going to be a 3-volume series. I'm calling it a sideways sequel to Gotham City 14 Miles, and the reason I'm calling it that is because the idea is the same. I'm bringing in several writers, and they're each taking an episode of first season of Batman 66 and doing an examination of it, but from very unique points of view. Everybody is going into it with a hook and hopefully a unique point of view that hasn't really been done before. But it's just like Gotham City 14 Miles. You're getting a lot of different voices from a lot of different backgrounds and a lot of different expertises dissecting these 17 episodes plus the feature film. Mm-hmm. In this volume, and I'm so excited, mostly because you, sir, John S. Drew, are part of this book.
Yep.
Do you want to reveal what episode you do? Because it hasn't been revealed yet.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah, I'm giving you permission. As your editor, I'm giving you permission.
Oh my God, what am I doing? I'm sorry.
You don't know what.
Folks, you're going to love it. No, I'm doing False Face.
Yes. And I'm so glad you got that one because you really wanted that one.
Oh, I did. I did want that. It was a lot of fun,
you did a great job. So that book is I'm saying it now. It's going to be done by BatCon, and we're going to make a splashy debut of it there, and it'll be available on Amazon also. It's in the editing stages right now. I've also gotten an illustration done for each episode by 4 or 5 different artists, and I just love it. They just did a really great job. The cover's done, but it hasn't been revealed yet. John, you saw the cover. Mm-hmm. It's going to be really, really fun. The cover design is really cool because it's going to be the same setup for each one of the volumes. Volume 2 and Volume 3 will be Volume 2 will be 2020 and Volume 3 will be in 2021. So there is that, and it'll look really good on your shelves next to Gotham City 14 Miles.
Yes, it will.
And then the podcast, is that what was the other thing?
Yeah, you're doing this podcast. You're two-timing me.
Yeah. Yes. Well. It's called Comic Chaos. COMICCHAOS, and you can find it all over the place. It's on the iHeart Podcast Network. You can pick it up on iTunes. We're on Spreaker. It's all over the place. We are actually have a Facebook page for it, Comic Chaos Podcast, on Facebook. We are on Twitter at Comic Chaos Pod. So look us up there, and we really, really, really want to hear some feedback on this. And what it basically is it's a comic book podcast, but it's so much more. We delve into the popular culture that's all around, the extension of comics, the movies and TV shows, and we get into all sorts of things. My co-host is Fred Lefevre, who is a radio personality in Toledo, Ohio. And we have some really unique takes on it. He's he can be a curmudgeon, and so can I at times. And I think the fun thing is that we're together. Fred and I have about 100 years of life experience that we're bringing this to this. Fred is in his 60s, and I'm in my 50s, so we think it's a really unique take on this whole comic book and pop culture thing, and we have a lot of fun with it. We do have guests from time to time, and sometimes we just go on and on about stuff. I don't know. When I say that, they're actually 30-minute podcasts, so it's on the shorter side because we know that people don't always have the time. They need to listen to podcasts like this one that we're recording right now.
Exactly.
And, so that's
you need to make time for my longer-winded ones.
That's okay. That's okay. The people value these discussions that you do.
Thank you. So they can find that on iTunes. They can look over on Facebook. There's a lot of ways to get a hold of it. Take a listen, folks. It's a lot of fun. I do enjoy it myself.
Thank you.
Yes. So that's going to do it then for this episode of the Batcave Podcast. Tune in next time where we're continuing our looks at the Filmation 77 series, the movies with Robert Long. We've got The Electro Woman and Dyna Girl. Eventually, we're going to get Monster Squad going here. And, of course, Jim will be back as we take a look at episode 2 of the serial here, The Bat's Cave. So I'm looking forward to that. Until next time, thank you so much for listening, citizens. Once again, Jim, everyone, take care. Jim?
Yeah. Oh, was I supposed to say something?
Oh, usually you say goodbye or something.
Okay. Goodbye, folks.
Take care.
Daka, the sinister Jap spy, believes Linda knows the whereabouts of the powerful radium gun. And what about Linda? Can she escape his evil clutches? Don't fail to see The Bat's Cave, Chapter 2 of Batman at this theater next week.
Oh, hold on.
If anybody is used to our podcast, they know that we're drunk, remember?
Yeah, well, I was going to say, we're doing this one sober.
Yeah.
All right. Anytime you're ready.
Okay.